I just figured I'd do a little impromptu one. So the thing that occurred to me was resourcefulness versus productivity, because the thing is, like, particularly nowadays, like, everything's moving really quickly, right? And there's such an emphasis on like optimizing this and time management and self-care, all this stuff, right? But the thing is that life is not like a clock. You can't just set in this thing and then it just works perfectly. Maybe you can reinforce those routines, but you can't just make it be like that, right? So I figured what better time to do a podcast on that than right now, because the original plan of how to do this didn't work out. And then the second plan didn't work out. And then the ability to go back to the original plan didn't work out. So what am I doing in response to that? Because the thing is that this is getting really trippy. I'm sorry. I'm literally seeing 3 of me on this. Okay, can't minimize it. Great. Okay, well, I guess I'm just Doctor Strange today because I can just see 3 different versions of myself on the screen. Anyway, so again, when things are not going perfect. So what do you do when the routine breaks down? What do you do when somebody can't make the call? What do you do when the software isn't working? What do you do when it doesn't work as you planned? Because it's inevitable. And for me as a musician, it's always been incredibly valuable as well, because all of my versions showed up today. Yeah, Rebecca. Well, a few of my personalities were left at the door, but I appreciate you checking out. Hopefully, Facebook will actually let me see your comments today. So as a musician, it's messing up is just inevitable. You're, regardless of what instrument you're playing, like, you're not looking at it most of the time, and sooner or later your hand's going to do this instead of that, and it's not going to sound good, right? And funny enough, I actually just played a show on Sunday where, I had 3 days notice, and I played each song maybe 2 or 3 times before actually doing the set, because I had other stuff that was more important to me to get done. And I messed up on, I don't know if I've messed up on every song, but I messed up on several songs. But the thing is that immediately after me, somebody else was messing up, and he was getting upset, and he was apologizing and everything. And when I messed up, I just made it a joke, right? I basically didn't even acknowledge it. And I still kept getting more claps. I got more claps than, the guy that came after me, and seemed to have more fun and so on. Why? When things went wrong, in some ways, his mess up was even more excusable, because that was more like a sound issue from the speakers. It wasn't even him messing up. So why were people okay with what I did, and they were just, he lost them? And the reason is because the attitude that you bring to your circumstances defines the energy that's around it. And you don't need to believe in, law of attraction, like different energy fields, stuff like that. But even if you just mean to talk about like the atmosphere, someone who messes up but then doesn't care or makes a joke about it, or obviously it does not lose self-confidence because of that, immediately is going to get a better like impression, going to make things more comfortable for everybody else than the person who's just like, shit. In music, the golden rule is don't stop, because nothing is more awkward than just stopping the song because you messed it up. And that goes for anything, acting, business, whatever. And another example for that is, for today, I mean, dude, I'm wearing a backwards baseball cap to keep my hair somewhat under control, and I don't look fancy or anything. And it was 20 minutes late when I started the podcast because I was like deciding what to do, but I did. But I did it. And being willing to adapt to what is happening right now versus what you planned to happen is, particularly in business or anything that requires failing over and over again, is going to be far more valuable than being able to set up a master plan that can't fail, because there's no such thing. And something that occurred to me where this applies to is entrepreneurs. And that can be anything from setting up your own mowing business, to being a copywriter like I am, being a musician, being an athlete, whatever it is. Because something is always going to happen. If you're an athlete, you'll get an injury. If you're a musician, you'll not know how the hell to grow your following. If you're in business, you'll not have any clients and such. So then what do you do in response to that? And what most people do is they say, well, I was going to do this, but this didn't work out, so I guess I just won't do it. And to be fair, part of the reason why I don't do that is because I'm incredibly stubborn, and when I want something, I'm more interested in wanting it and getting it than what it takes to get it. And that's where the buck ends for me, so to speak. It's just, well, just because it's hard doesn't mean I don't want it. Like, I'm still going to keep doing it. I was that kid who would rage his way through a boss fight in a video game, no matter what. Yeah, see, Rebecca understands. It just, most people, when they get frustrated, they get demotivated. Versus the people who, when they get frustrated, are like, no, fuck you. I'm not getting out of this goddamn couch until you're dead, until I'm looking at that progress screen. And sure, I broke a few controllers doing that, but the point is that at the end of the day, moving forward is more important than not, right? So at the same time, a lot of people are not like that. And how do you take advantage of that benefit if it doesn't come naturally? Because also, like, part of my thing was having to learn how to control my temper when necessary, that other people have no problem doing because they're more mild-mannered than I am. So if you are more mild-mannered, how can you implement this kind of approach to be more resourceful in the moment? You don't have to be angry like I generally get. I don't always get angry. But I think the answer for that is to remember that you are not the car. You're the person inside the car. And what I mean by that is, if your car tire pops and you can't keep driving, what do? Assuming you don't, immediately die in a horrible car wreck. You pull over and you call AAA or whatever the car service is where you live, or you call somebody else, whatever it is. You do something after that. Don't just sit in the car and wait until you die of exhaustion or hunger or anything. But that's what people do when it comes to their plans. When things don't work out, it's like, oh, well, this didn't work, and then they just self-destruct. But if in that moment you maintain the attitude that you are inside the vehicle, you're inside the plan, but the plan is not you. The plan is not your ability to handle the situation. It's just the first attempt you did. How many different things that you can do now and do well did you have to fail hundreds of times at, dozens of times, whatever it was? The difference is that in that case, you basically took it for granted that you were going to mess it up, versus when you have a plan, and the whole point of that plan is for it to work that time. So it's like your brain is like more rigid in its approach in that second situation. And I think if you look at it that way, you become more flexible. Because it's the same thing as like if you want to get into a building, but the door is locked, do you just walk away from the building? Maybe you have the key to unlock the door, but if you literally just stop at the first attempt that doesn't work and then turn away, that's basically what people do. And of course, it's easy to say in that situation, right? I was lucky and talented. Exactly. Everything worked out the first time. Well, with you, Len, I wouldn't be surprised. The universe helps you cheat, giving you all that nature energy and whatnot. But um, that's a big thing for me because I noticed that one of the biggest times when I moved ahead when other people got stuck was because like my life has mostly been, hey, my life has mostly sucked most of the time. It's gotten better in the last year or so, I think. Um, but that was just normal to me. So if things went horribly or somebody couldn't come over or somebody was treating me horribly, like that was what I was used to. And again, like a lot of people get discouraged by that. They like lose their self-confidence because they have a life like that. But because I'm rage motivation mode and always have been, I don't care if things don't go well. I mean, yeah, I get pissed off, but like it doesn't stop me. I don't see a reason to stop. It's the same thing as like if you're running in the forest and like you stumble on something, you just like Superman dive into the freaking ground. No, you just regain your balance and you keep going. You don't even think about it. Yeah, just keep going. It's not a big deal. And that is the kind of attitude you have to bring to whatever it is. And I mean, there are people who go bankrupt, there are people who lose limbs, people who go blind, and so on, who decide that they're going to do this in spite of that. And a perfect example of that would be I had an uncle, not related, but through marriage, and he had a rare nerve condition that basically made him go from a athlete in college to barely able to move his like one hand and barely able to talk by the time he died. But despite that, he became a mechanical engineer, which is not easy and pays very well, in Boston, which is not expensive, which is not cheap. Point is that there are people fully capable, perfect eyesight, no issues talking, et cetera, who are working at a gas station when they're 40 years old. And he literally was doing all that. He had less to work with in that case, but he still did it. And that's the way you need to approach whatever it is, no matter what your situation is. If you want to be getting clients, gigs, whatever it is, I'm trying to make this applicable to multiple situations. Or even if you work a normal job, but your job sucks, and you're like, what do I do? Because it pays too much. I don't want to like give this up. I mean, you can still look for better jobs and talk to them and like make time like on the weekend or whatever. You can send emails and such. Maybe nobody gets back to you, but you can still do something. It may not be that optimal action that you would like to take, where you just walk out the door one place and walk into the building another, and somebody shakes your hand and bam, you got a better job. But that's not how it works for like anybody, so it doesn't even matter. Hunter once told me, if you're going through hell, you don't want to stay there. Keep going. Yeah, I mean, the thing for me is that I'd rather take over hell because heaven seems boring. But the point is that regardless, uh, exactly, you don't let the outside circumstance define how you respond in that particular case. And also, that was, oh no, it seems the comments are working today because it's actually scrolling down. Whoopee. So yeah, that's the first thing that occurs to me in terms of being resourceful is just to maintain the attitude that you exist independent of your situation. And by doing that, you necessarily create that mental separation that first of all gives you like the emotional separation so that you're not just like caught up in the moment, caught up in anxiety, but also makes you think like it's over there. Because if you really think about it, if you feel like something's happening to you, the way you respond to it is very different versus when you treat something as like external. And there's that sense of control over it, which is kind of funny when you think about it, because you'd think that if something's happening with you, you would feel more in control, but I think it's just like survival instinct kicking in. But if you can manage to do that, then you have that first step done. You have the space to decide that you're going to respond differently. Now, what comes next? Like if the first thing didn't work out and you had all your cards bet on that, well, what was the goal? For example, today, the goal was to not happening to you, it's happening around you. Exactly. It's just a situation that you respond in, but you're still in control. And when it comes to a goal that wasn't achieved because of plan A, what was that goal? So for today, it was to do the podcast. And then someone asked me if I could do a business meeting at 10 a.m. and I forgot that this was happening at 10 a.m. So I said yes. And I mentioned to Krish, whatever, obviously Krish is not here. So 10:20, we were supposed to do the podcast, didn't do it. Supposed to do the meeting, didn't do it. Supposed to, maybe do the meeting again because there was availability, couldn't do it. So it was just me, it was late, and whatever. The goal was originally to do the podcast. So rather than just doing one of the topics that we wanted to talk about, I was like, well, what am I experiencing in this situation that I can turn into a benefit? So there you have somebody who they knew what the goal was and they knew that it wasn't going to be achieved as they originally intended to, but you could still adapt to it. And I mean, honestly, that step is just pretty simple. Like you get the emotional distance, you figure out what you're originally trying to do, and then you just decide what you're going to do to move towards that now. I'm not going to harp on it. I have a gift for being verbose, but even me, I just understand that. And that actually also leads me into the next point, which is to make it work for you. I remember a scenario that I came across, I don't know, when I was first getting into marketing. And it said that there's a Ferrari in front of you and you can pay $10,000 for it or whatever. What do you do? And I think it was like the $10,000 was like the last money that you had, something like that. And like the first thing would be is like, oh, well, I'm going to buy it because, what does it matter? YOLO. The second response was to not get it because, well, you just can't afford it and it's not worth it to fork over all of your money just so that you can have a joyride. The third response, and of course there are going to be numerous ones you can do, but these were the ones that were presented, were you buy it and then you flip it. Because a new Ferrari is worth way more than $10,000, even with the devaluation, once it goes off a lot. And that is how you turn a situation that's like not what you want. You're, having to spend your last $10,000 or whatever, or get the Ferrari. You're just like, well, I don't give a shit about the Ferrari. There you go. Give me my, 150K or however much it would be selling for. When you look at that situation in that way, that is when you not only push through the negativity, like the crap situation that you ended up in, but you literally turn it into compost for a better situation. And that obviously keeps you from being slowed down because you just kept going. B, it can actually bring you farther ahead than you would even if it had gone perfectly. Because that breaking up of routine and that sudden, like the need to react quickly makes it real. it's almost like there's a leopard in front of you and you have to avoid it, you know? So you can actually make more progress towards that thing that you originally were going to. And C, more often than not, now or in the future, somebody will perceive that you did that. And as a result, you will build a reputation, whatever it is. You will also get a social result to that. And that's something that I've experienced a bunch of times where something negative happened or whatever. Like I'll point out that like when I wanted to go to this event in August, and originally I was just gonna have to Uber back and forth from the airport because I couldn't afford a hotel. When I did that, a buddy of mine said, "No, you're not doing that," and he literally let me room with him while I was at the event. And he wasn't like a small time dude, you know, he's a big time dude. And he's like, "No, just come and stay here." But if people don't know about that, they can't care enough to offer aid, or they can't notice what you're doing. And when you have the command of the situation where you're like, I don't care that it's going negatively, this is what's going on. By the way, if anybody wants to help, there you go. But I'm doing it anyway. And here it is. So I don't want to keep going around in circles, but in terms of just responding to situations and owning how you react in them, I think that's the simplest way to go about it, is you remind yourself that it's happening around you, not to you, that you can still respond. You're the person in the car, not the car that popped the wheel. You think, what was the original goal that you wanted to reach? And what can you do to move towards that goal now? It doesn't matter if you can reach it exactly as you wanted to or not, you can still move towards it. And 3, you look at a way to literally make it a benefit. Because if you think about it, you're stuck with the situation anyway. You might as well choose to make it positive. It's literally insane to not do that if you think about it. Because if the circumstances suck, you only have how you can respond and how you feel about it. You'll respond, you'll do whatever you do, right? But you gain nothing by allowing yourself to feel negative for it. I don't know why my thumbs up should be like this. I'll do it like that. You gain nothing by allowing the situation to just negatively impact you overall. So the only intelligent solution, assuming that you don't want to be miserable, is to choose that this is something positive for you. And a perfect example of that, something that really sucked, was when I moved here, I left another place with someone who wasn't a good person. And while I was transitioning to here, the person threw out / sold everything I left behind. And everything I could bring with me fit in a sedan. So like I lost birthday cards, I lost guitars, I lost basses, I lost an in-ear monitoring system, I lost all my books, I lost my swords, which is also important to me. Like all kinds of stuff. How could there be a positive in that situation to just losing all your shit? In my case, I looked at it as, well, now I'm more flexible, because particularly then I had like nothing. I had 2 chairs, a dresser, and the thing that this computer is on. So I looked at it as a way, as like, well, I'm more flexible in that I can move here or I can do that and all this other stuff. I would rather have my stuff, but the point is that you can always choose to make a negative a positive. And yeah, I think that's honestly most of what occurs to me for everything. I don't want to be harping on things too long. I managed to fill it up pretty good. But I guess I can try to play devil's advocate. Think, well, what if it's such a big deal that you can't see any way out of it, even when you want to blow up the world? Exactly. And I know that feeling too, Rebecca, because, well, never mind. I'm not saying that on Facebook. But when you And the situation just seemed like, how could there possibly be a positive to it, right? There's just no, like, you can't reframe it. Take like, I mean, friggin' Stephen Hawking's example. There is nothing, like, the dude was a genius before he was losing control of his body. He was already like in a prestigious school. He was already doing all this stuff, right? But when he was basically imprisoned in his body, in his head, really, he just went out through that. So rather than being able to physically move through the world, his mind was traveling through space, because through the theoretical physics, he was a theoretical physicist. He studied theoretical physics, tongue twister, whatever. He was able to figure out things and experience things in ways that you normally can't, because you're experiencing everything. You're experiencing touch, you're experiencing taste, and whatever else that you're focused on in your daily life. But because he was stuck like this, day in, day out, couldn't even talk, had to type on the keyboard to do his stuff, and he didn't even have that the whole time. Because remember, this started in like 1970 or something. He literally turned a prison into like a spaceship where he could travel around the cosmos. So no matter what the situation is, it doesn't, there's only the ease with which your creativity will come up with a positive for the situation. There isn't one or the other. So yeah, I think that's, honestly, that's pretty much everything. Anyway, thank you for coming today, and I will catch you next time. Old sport. Thank you. Good day, good luck, and remember, I forgot.